tonight, the storyteller's old tea stall was nearly packed away when familiar footsteps echoed through the rain-soaked alley. So I dusted off the lanterns again, warmed the wine, and muttered that you all really have a habit of returning right when the tales turn interesting. Come in. Outside, the wind carries rumors of sects too proud to kneel and storms that eat cultivators whole. Sit closer, before this night grows any stranger. According to a torn page from the Cyanwood archives, chaos first ignited when Chu Feng confronted the arrogant Orion Monastery and turned their schemes into humiliation beneath absolute pressure. Yet peace was only a passing breath, as his path soon carried him beyond the Cyanwood Domain toward the Overlord Domain, where 90,000 miles of sea and a man-made storm blocked the road to the Weaponry Refinement Immortal's island. And now, as half-martial emperors struggle through thunder and waves, a Nangong Imperial Clan descends, with a child genius who laughs at the rules of cultivation itself and dares to point at Chu Feng in the midst of the storm. One question changed the air around Chu Feng. Is Headmaster Xikong still in the southern Cyanwood forest? The elder who had been speaking with him paused, and in that pause, Chu Feng sensed it. The kind of unease cultivators try to hide when a storm has already entered the gate. To others, Xikong Jiaxing was merely the headmaster of a declining branch that had recently begun to rise. But to Chu Feng, he was a benefactor. Years ago, when Chu Feng had been cornered and nearly crushed under the southern Cyanwood forest's own internal cruelty, Xikong had stepped forward. Without that help, Chu Feng's path might have ended before it ever truly began. And Chu Feng was not someone who forgot kindness. Before leaving this place again, before walking toward dangers, even he could not fully predict, he wanted to meet the old headmaster properly. Not for ceremony, not for fame, for gratitude. But the elder's face tightened. Lord Headmaster is in the main palace, he said. He is receiving guests from the Orion Monastery. Chu Feng's gaze sharpened. The Orion Monastery? Why would they come here? That name was not small. Among Cyanwood Mountain's subsidiary powers, there were many branches, but only a handful stood at the first tier. The Orion Monastery was one of them. In the southern region, they had long acted like the sky itself belonged to them. Once, they had looked down on the southern Cyanwood forest as if it were dust beneath their boots. Now they had come in person. The elder leaned closer, lowering his voice. Chu Feng, your arrival may have come at the right moment. They did not come with friendly hearts. Chu Feng's expression cooled. Tell me everything. The elder did not waste words. Some days ago, the Orion Monastery's headmaster came here with a map. He claimed he had found a hidden treasure deposit inside territory belonging to our southern Cyanwood forest. He said that, out of respect, he wanted to open it together with Lord Headmaster and split the gains evenly. Chu Feng gave a faint, humorless smile. Out of respect? The elder understood that look. Yes, had this happened in the past, they would have entered our land without asking. They would have taken everything and left us with nothing. But things are different now. They know what you did in Cyanwood Mountain. They know Bai Yunxiao and the others were defeated by you. They know Lord White Ape values you. So that was it. The Orion Monastery had not suddenly discovered courtesy. They had discovered Chu Feng's shadow behind the southern Cyanwood forest. The elder continued. At first, everything seemed proper. Lord Headmaster helped them open the deposit, and the treasures inside were far better than expected. That was when the Orion Monastery began to regret its own promise. Chu Feng's eyes narrowed. They wanted all of it. They did, the elder said. But because they had already spoken publicly, and because Lord Headmaster had truly contributed, they still handed over half, unwillingly, but they did it. Then, why are they here now? The elder's face darkened. For some unknown reason, they suddenly changed their words. They claimed the division was unfair. They want the southern Cyanwood forest to return the entire half we received. Chu Feng's voice dropped, and Xikong refused. Of course, but the Orion Monastery's headmaster brought his management elders here by force. They said anyone below half-martial emperor was unqualified to speak, then drove the rest of us out. At that moment, Chu Feng's anger was no longer hidden. They dare come into this place and rob it openly? The elder could only lower his head. We do not know what gave them such courage, but they are inside now, and Lord Headmaster is facing them alone. Chu Feng did not hesitate. Take me there." Outside the main palace, the strongest elders and disciples of the southern Cyanwood forest had already gathered. Their faces were tense, their fists clenched, their cultivation rising quietly beneath their robes. They knew the difference in strength. They knew that if battle erupted, most of them would not even be qualified to stand in the aftershock. Yet none of them left. That is what rising sects are made of. Not only power, not only resources, but the moment when weak people decide they would rather stand together than kneel separately. Inside the palace, Xikong Jiaxing sat alone against 13 half-martial emperors from the Orion Monastery. 13. Among them were 5 rank 2 half-martial emperors. And seated at the center was the Orion Monastery's headmaster himself, a rank 3 half-martial emperor. Xikong Jiaxing was only rank 1. The gap was not small. In the cultivation world, 1 rank could already decide life and death. Here, the difference was like a mountain pressing down on a single man. The Orion headmaster stared at him coldly. "Xikong Jiaxing, it seems you still refuse to return our treasures." Xikong's face was ugly, but his back remained straight. "Your treasures?" he replied. "You were the one who proposed an equal division. You were the one who asked us to open the deposit together. Now that the treasures are in hand, you want to erase your own words?" The Orion headmaster's eyes hardened. "You speak as though this is a negotiation." With a sudden strike, his palm smashed the table before him into fragments. The force of a rank 3 half-martial emperor burst through the hall like a wave. Xikong Jiaxing was thrown from his seat. He stumbled back, nearly falling. Outside, the southern Cyanwood forest cultivators felt the pressure and stiffened. Inside, the Orion elders did not move to stop their headmaster. Some even looked amused. Xikong steadied himself, but the humiliation was visible. Not because his will was weak, but because his cultivation was too low. In this world, righteousness without strength is often forced to swallow blood. The Orion headmaster leaned forward. "Listen carefully. I am not asking. I am ordering you. Hand over that half now, or your southern Cyanwood forest will learn what it costs to oppose the Orion Monastery." Xikong's hands tightened. "So this is robbery. Call it what it is." That was the only dignity left to him. He raised his head and said, "Do you not fear this matter reaching Cyanwood Mountain? Do you not fear the main headmaster's judgment?" For a moment, silence filled the palace. Then the Orion headmaster laughed. Not gently, not politely. He laughed as if Xikong had told a joke too foolish to be answered seriously. "Cyanwood Mountain?" he said. "Xikong Jiaxing, do you truly believe they will care about a quarrel between subsidiary powers?" His voice turned sharper. "And even if they did care, who do you think they would value more? Your southern Cyanwood forest or my Orion Monastery?" Xikong did not answer. The truth was cruel. The southern Cyanwood forest had risen because of Chu Feng, but its foundation was still shallow. The Orion Monastery had power, status, and years of influence. On paper, the answer was obvious. The Orion headmaster pressed harder. "You dare use the main headmaster's name to threaten me? Who are you to speak like that? What weight does your name carry?" Those words struck deeper than any palm. Xikong Jiaxing stood there in silence, not because he had no anger, but because anger alone could not defeat 13 half-martial emperors. And outside the palace doors, Chu Feng was approaching. The Orion Monastery believed the southern Cyanwood forest had no one qualified to answer them. But they had forgotten one thing. Some debts are repaid with gratitude, and some insults are answered by the person they were most afraid to provoke. The Orion Monastery had come to the southern Cyanwood forest with one belief burning in their hearts. Chu Feng was finished. And because they believed that, their old arrogance returned. Inside the palace hall, Xikong Jiaxing stood facing the Orion Monastery's headmaster. The air between them was already sharp, but the headmaster's smile carried something darker than confidence. It carried revenge. He looked at Xikong Jiaxing and sneered. "Do you think I do not know why you dare to stand so firmly before me? It is Chu Feng, is it not? That boy climbed onto the Cyanwood succession list. He defeated Bai Yunxiao and the others. He even caught the attention of half-martial Emperor White Ape." Then his voice turned cold. "But fame is like morning mist. It rises quickly and disappears even faster." Xikong Jiaxing's expression changed at once. "What are you saying?" The Orion headmaster leaned forward, enjoying every flicker of worry on his face. I am saying Chu Feng's good days are over. He offended people he never should have touched. He returned to Cyanwood Mountain, entered the World Spiritist Alliance as a nominal disciple, and prepared to join the Nine Powers hunt. But that hunt will not be his stage. It will be his grave. For the southern Cyanwood Forest, Chu Feng was not just a talented junior. He was their hope, their proof that a forgotten branch could still produce a true dragon. So when Sikong Jiaxing heard those words, his heart was not shaken because of benefits or status. It was shaken because he feared for Chu Feng. That is impossible, Sikong said, his voice tense. Tell me clearly, what happened to him? The Orion headmaster laughed softly. You still refuse to believe it? Then wait. I already sent people to confirm the result of the Nine Powers hunt. Soon, the news will arrive. By then, you will have no choice but to accept it. Then his hatred finally spilled out. Chu Feng killed my disciple Yuan Qing. He humiliated my Orion Monastery. Because of him, our reputation fell, and forces that once respected us began to look down on us. His smile twisted. But revenge does not always come immediately. Sometimes, one simply waits for heaven to swing the blade. The Orion elders around him smiled with satisfaction. In their minds, Chu Feng was already dead, and without Chu Feng, the southern Cyanwood Forest was nothing more than a rising weed waiting to be trampled back into the mud. Sikong Jiaxing clenched his fists. You are wrong. Chu Feng would not fall so easily. The Orion headmaster gave a mocking snort. Faith is admirable, Sikong, but faith will not bring back a dead man. And then, bang! The palace doors were kicked open. The entire hall froze. The Orion elders turned in alarm, their auras stirring instinctively. Who dares? A young man stepped through the entrance, calm as still water, but with a smile sharp enough to cut through every lie in the room. No need to ask. His gaze swept over them. I, Chu Feng, am still alive. For one breath, no one spoke. The Orion Monastery's people knew that face. They had all seen Chu Feng before. And because they knew him, the shock struck even harder. He was supposed to be gone. He was supposed to have been crushed during the Nine Powers hunt. Yet there he stood, walking into the hall as if fate itself had dragged him there to answer their mockery. Sikong Jiaxing's pale face instantly filled with relief. Chu Feng. Chu Feng gave him a small nod, then looked back at the Orion Monastery. I am sorry. It seems I have disappointed all of you. The Orion elders could not answer. Some opened their mouths, but no words came out. Even their headmaster, who had been laughing a moment earlier, now felt his confidence split apart, because their entire plan had been built on one assumption. Chu Feng was dead, but now that assumption was standing right in front of them. Chu Feng continued forward. You came here while I was away. You broke your agreement. You tried to seize what belonged to the southern Cyanwood Forest. Tell me, if Headmaster Dugu of Cyanwood Mountain heard of this, what do you think would happen? Those words landed like thunder. The Orion headmaster's expression shifted instantly. His fierce face became forced and smiling. Chu Feng, you misunderstand. We were merely joking with Headmaster Sikong. There is no need to take it seriously. Chu Feng smiled faintly. Joking? The hall became painfully quiet. Fine, I can pretend I heard nothing. The Orion headmaster's eyes brightened for the briefest moment, but Chu Feng was not finished. Return 50% of the treasures you took from the southern Cyanwood Forest. Then, from this year onward, your Orion Monastery will offer tribute of equal value every year. Do that, and this matter can end peacefully. The Orion headmaster's face stiffened. Every year? That was no small request. That was not an apology. That was submission. His fear wavered, and pride surged back. You want us to hand over treasures every year? Chu Feng, you are dreaming. Chu Feng did not move. The Orion headmaster pointed at him, his anger overpowering his caution. Do you think the favor of Half-Martial Emperor White Ape allows you to command us? No matter how famous you are still only a disciple. You do not have the authority to force the Orion Monastery to bow. Then his eyes narrowed. And do not think your troubles are over. There are people far above us who want to deal with you. You may have escaped once, but how long can you continue acting so fearless? That line revealed the thought hidden in his heart. He believed the rumor was still true in spirit. Even if Chu Feng had survived the Nine Powers hunt, perhaps he had only run back here to hide. Perhaps someone within Cyanwood Mountain still intended to erase him. And if that was the case, why should Orion fear a doomed disciple? But fate has a cruel sense of timing. Just then, hurried footsteps rushed toward the hall. Lord Headmaster, this is bad. A half-martial emperor elder from the Orion Monastery burst inside, face drained of color. But the moment he saw Chu Feng, his legs weakened. You, Chu Feng, why are you here? He stumbled and nearly collapsed, looking as if he had seen a spirit return from the underworld. The Orion headmaster snapped at him. You are a management elder of my monastery. Why are you behaving like this? The elder's hands trembled as he held out a letter. Headmaster, please, read this. The Orion headmaster frowned, snatched the letter, and opened it. At first, his eyes were sharp. Then they widened. Then the blood vanished from his face. The hall watched him silently as his expression changed from anger to disbelief to pure terror. Because the letter carried the latest news from Cyanwood Mountain. Chu Feng had not died in the Nine Powers hunt. He had taken first place, and that was only the beginning. The letter said he had slain Qin Lingyun during the hunt. After the hunt ended, he had also killed Qin Wentian. These were not ordinary names. These were disciples tied to power, influence, and serious consequences. Yet the most frightening part was not the killing. The most frightening part was that Cyanwood Mountain's headmaster, Dugu Xingfeng, had protected him. That meant Chu Feng was no longer merely a talented disciple under White Ape's notice. He had become the #1 disciple of Cyanwood Mountain. He had become someone Dugu Xingfeng openly favored. For the Orion Monastery, this was not news. It was judgment. The headmaster staggered backward, the letter shaking in his hand. No, this cannot be. His feet lost strength. With a dull thud, he fell onto the floor. A moment earlier, he had mocked Xikong Zaixing for believing in Chu Feng. A moment earlier, he had declared that Chu Feng's path had reached its end. But now, the truth sat in his hand like a heavenly decree. Chu Feng was alive, not hiding, not ruined, not abandoned. He had returned with greater status than ever before. Chu Feng looked down at the fallen headmaster, his expression calm, but the meaning in his eyes was unmistakable. The southern Cyanwood forest was no longer a place the Orion Monastery could bully at will. And the name Chu Feng, which they thought had already become a corpse in the Nine Powers hunt, had instead become a blade hanging above their heads. But in the cultivation world, when one enemy trembles, another often begins to move. Chu Feng's survival had changed the balance of power here. Yet the names written in that letter also carried blood, grudges, and forces that would not remain silent forever. The Orion Monastery had just learned that Chu Feng was still alive. Soon, the wider world would learn something far more dangerous. Chu Feng's rise had only begun. A single letter can weigh more than a mountain. One breath ago, the headmaster of the Orion Monastery still carried himself like a superior power visiting a declining branch. The next breath, his legs weakened, his pride shattered, and the old man who had come to pressure the southern Cyanwood forest found himself smiling like a servant begging for mercy. Chu Feng watched him quietly. That faint smile on Chu Feng's face was not surprise. It was judgment. He had already seen through the letter with his heaven's eyes. He knew exactly what news had frightened the old fox so badly. The Orion Monastery's headmaster wiped the sweat from his face and hurried toward Xikong Zaixing. Brother Xikong, he said, forcing warmth into his voice. There was a misunderstanding earlier, a terrible misunderstanding. The remaining treasures from the deposit, I have brought them. Please accept them. Treasures spilled out from his cosmos sack, one after another, until they formed a dazzling pile before Xikong Zaixing. The elders of the southern Cyanwood forest stared in silence. Xikong Zaixing himself froze. This was the same headmaster who had been pressuring them moments earlier. Now, he was offering treasures with both hands? The old headmaster continued, his smile trembling at the edges. Starting next year, my Orion Monastery will also send tribute equal to half the value of these treasures. Consider it our respect toward the southern Cyanwood forest and toward little friend Chu Feng. Xikong Zaixing's eyes narrowed. Something was wrong. He reached for the letter, and when he read it, his expression changed completely. The news was far greater than he had imagined. Before this, he had only known that Chu Feng had defeated Bai Yunxiao and others, and that half-martial Emperor White Ape had shown him favor. That alone was enough to make the southern Cyanwood forest proud. But now, Chu Feng had defeated Qin Lingyun. He had defeated Qin Wenxian. And even more shocking, he had gained the favor of Dugu Xingfeng. Dugu Xingfeng was not an ordinary backer. His name carried the weight of authority, danger, and influence. Xikong Jiaxing slowly looked at Chu Feng again, and for a moment, even he did not know what to say. This young man had not merely grown, he had risen too fast for reason to follow. The Orion Monastery's headmaster bowed slightly and said, "Little friend Chu Feng, since everything has been settled, I will leave first. Please, I beg you, do not mention today's matter to Lord Headmaster, and if possible, say a few good words for me." He wanted to escape. Anyone with eyes could see it. But just as he turned to leave, Chu Feng's voice cut through the hall. "Wait." The old man stiffened. He turned back with a smile so strained it almost looked painful. "Little friend Chu Feng, is there something else?" Chu Feng's gaze remained calm. "You misunderstood something. The tribute worth half the treasure deposit was my demand before you read that letter." The hall went silent. Chu Feng continued, each word landing like a stone dropped into deep water. "Now, every year, the Orion Monastery will send tribute equal to the full value of the treasure deposit." The old headmaster's face twisted. "All of it?" he snapped, losing control for the first time. "Chu Feng, you are raising the price after the matter is settled. You are pushing us too far." And here, old friends, we see the truth of sect politics. The Orion Monastery had not come here to apologize. They had come because they thought Chu Feng's foundation was shallow, because they believed the southern Cyanwood forest could still be stepped on. But once they learned the mountain behind Chu Feng was higher than expected, their arrogance became fear. Chu Feng did not soften. "Yes," he said coldly. "I am raising the price. Yes, I am pushing you. You may refuse, but if you do, bear the consequences yourself." The Orion Monastery's headmaster trembled between rage and terror. Then another voice entered the hall. "I advise you to accept." Hong Qiang walked in with the calm of a man who did not need to announce his strength. The Orion Monastery's people turned toward him at once. The headmaster swallowed. "And who might you be to speak such words?" Hong Qiang's eyes narrowed. "You are not qualified to know my name." Then his aura descended, not like wind, not like thunder, like a heavenly hand pressing a group of insects into the dirt. The Orion Monastery's headmaster and his elders were blasted out of the palace hall, rolling across the ground before the shocked eyes of the southern Cyanwood Forest disciples. Yet strangely, the southern Cyanwood Forest felt nothing. That pressure had been controlled perfectly. It touched only the Orion Monastery. That alone told everyone one thing. This was not wild power. This was mastery. The Orion Monastery's headmaster lay on the ground, face pale, body shaking under the invisible weight. "My lord, please stop," he cried. I agree to Chu Feng's condition." Hong Qiang withdrew his oppressive might. The old headmaster no longer dared to argue. With trembling hands, he took out another portion of treasures, making up the remaining value. Then he promised, before everyone present, that the Orion Monastery would deliver the same level of tribute every year. For the southern Cyanwood Forest, this was not merely wealth. It was status. It was compensation. It was the moment a former oppressor bowed its head in public. The headmaster wanted nothing more than to flee. But before he could leave, Chu Feng moved. A flash, a blur, a palm rising through the air. The Orion Monastery's headmaster was still a rank 3 half-martial emperor. By cultivation alone, he should have stood above a rank 8 martial king like a cliff over a stream. He tried to dodge. Then lightning erupted around Chu Feng. His aura surged. In an instant, Chu Feng stepped from rank 8 martial king into the realm of a rank 1 half-martial emperor. The old headmaster's eyes widened. "What?" Before the word could fully leave his mouth, Chu Feng's palm struck his face and sent him down before everyone. The sound echoed across the palace grounds. No one moved. Chu Feng stood above him, his voice colder than steel. "That slap is a reminder. Keep your promise. If you break it, even if you hide at the edge of the world, I will find you." The headmaster no longer had any pride left to defend. "I won't dare," he said quickly. "I swear I won't dare." And perhaps that was the deepest humiliation of all. He had feared Dugu Xingfeng. He had feared Hong Qiang. But now he feared Chu Feng himself. This was the boy he had underestimated. The boy who had once been nothing more than a name in a small branch. Now, with one palm, he had made a rank 3 half-martial emperor understand the distance between them. The Orion Monastery's people fled in disgrace. Only after they disappeared did the people of the southern Cyanwood Forest begin to breathe normally again. But their eyes did not leave Chu Feng. Some remembered the day he first came here. Back then, he had been hunted by Han Qingyu, a rank 9 martial king. Back then, his life had nearly been taken inside this very world of ruthless cultivation. And now, less than 2 years had passed. Chu Feng had just slapped down the headmaster of the Orion Monastery, a grand rank 3 half-martial emperor. How could anyone measure such growth? One elder whispered, "Is this still talent?" Another answered softly, "No, this is something beyond talent." Xikong Jiaxing said nothing for a long while. His pride, his shock, and his disbelief all mixed together as he looked at Chu Feng. To the southern Cyanwood Forest, Chu Feng was no longer simply a former disciple. He had become proof that their fallen branch had not been abandoned by fate. Xikong Jiaxing wanted to host a feast. He wanted to welcome Chu Feng, Hongqiang, and Tantai Shui properly, to let the entire forest celebrate this impossible return. But Chu Feng could not stay. There were matters ahead of him. Greater roads, greater enemies, greater storms. He thanked Xikong Jiaxing, arranged a safe place for Grandpa Luo and the others, and prepared to leave. When Chu Feng, Hongqiang, and Tantai Shui departed, nearly everyone from the southern Cyanwood Forest came out to see them off. They did not look at Chu Feng like a junior. They looked at him like a banner, like a legend walking away before their eyes. Xikong Jiaxing watched their figures vanish into the distance, and an old memory surfaced in his heart. Lord Bailey had once said that one day, a grand, powerful expert would rise from the southern Cyanwood Forest, a person capable of influencing the entire holy land of martialism. Back then, those words had sounded like a dream. Now Xikong Jiaxing's aged face filled with pride. "Lord Bailey," he murmured, "I believe that person has appeared." His eyes remained fixed on the horizon. "And his name is Chu Feng." But in the world of cultivation, every rise attracts heavier karma. Chu Feng had restored honor to the southern Cyanwood Forest today, but the road ahead would not be paved with gratitude. It would be paved with rivals, hidden schemes, ancient grudges, and powers far greater than the Orion Monastery. The young dragon had shown his claws, and from this moment on, the holy land of martialism would begin to feel his shadow. When the boundary energy vanished, the holy land of martialism did not celebrate. No, fellow Taoists, it trembled. Across great sects, ancient clans, wandering factions, and nameless mountain villages, the news spread like a cold wind before disaster. The boundary energy is gone? That barrier has existed for ages. How can something like that simply disappear? Is this fortune or the beginning of calamity? No one had an answer. But cultivators understand one truth better than ordinary men. When the heavens suddenly change, it is never without consequence. And yet, beneath that fear, there was one undeniable benefit. The ancient era's teleportation formations, once separated by the invisible force of boundary energy, were now linked across vast regions. Paths that had once required impossible travel could now be crossed in only days. That was how Chu Feng, Hongqiang, and Tantai Shui left the Cyanwood Domain behind and stepped through formation after formation until they arrived in a place that carried a completely different weight, the Overlord Domain. The moment their feet touched land, Chu Feng felt it. This was not merely another territory. This was the gathering place of monsters wearing human skin, hidden experts who rarely showed themselves, and powers whose names alone could silence weaker sects. Hongqiang glanced around and said quietly, "This place has always been different. In the holy land of martialism, if someone wishes to stand above all others, this is where they must prove it." Tantai Shui, still veiled beneath her white gauze bamboo hat, looked toward the vast shore before them. Even with her calm nature, she could not hide her surprise. So this is the Overlord Domain. And truly, the name was not empty. Long ago, this was the stage of the 5 overlords: Emperor Qi, the Beast Emperor, Emperor Huang, Emperor Gong, and Emperor Qing. 10,000 years had passed since their era shook the world, and many martial emperors had risen afterward. Some were terrifying, some were legendary, but none had dared to call themselves Overlord. That alone told you how heavy the word was. Chu Feng's gaze sharpened. So many experts gathered in one domain. No wonder the pressure here feels different. Hongqiang gave a faint nod. In other places, power may hide behind reputation. Here, reputation must survive power. Their arrival point was a golden beach. The sand shone beneath the light like scattered treasure, bright enough to look almost artificial. Had the shore been empty, it might have been a place worth admiring. But beauty had no space to breathe today. The beach was packed with martial cultivators. Shoulder to shoulder, crowd after crowd stretched toward the waterline. More people continued pouring out from the ancient era's teleportation formation behind them, each arrival adding to the restless noise. And these were not weaklings. Chu Feng swept his senses through the crowd, and his eyes changed slightly. The weakest people here were still martial kings. Martial lords were not even worth mentioning, because there were none to be found. Among the countless auras, he could even faintly sense several existences comparable to Hongqiang, peak half-martial emperors. Tan Taishe turned her head slightly. This many powerful cultivators, all gathered on a beach? Hongqiang listened to the surrounding conversations, then said, "It seems the rumors were true. They came for the Weaponry Bestowment Assembly." Chu Feng's interest stirred. So the Weaponry Refinement Immortal really plans to bestow weapons? That is what everyone is hoping, Hongqiang replied. But hope and reality are never the same thing. Tan Taishui glanced at the endless crowd. With this many people here, could he possibly forge enough weapons for all of them? Hongqiang chuckled softly. You are thinking too kindly. Most of these people will never even reach the point where they can receive anything. So there will be a trial? Chu Feng asked. There almost certainly will be, Hongqiang said. And even among those who came, not all are truly here for weapons. Many only want to see the Weaponry Refinement Immortal once. For ordinary cultivators, meeting such a figure is already a lifetime's fortune. That was the truth of the cultivation world. Some people risk their lives for treasures. Others risk their lives just to stand before someone whose existence proved how high the martial path could reach. But Tan Taishui soon noticed something strange. The beach was painfully crowded. People were pressed together, yet not one person rose into the sky. She frowned lightly. Why is everyone standing on the ground? With so many experts here, flying would be simple. Hongqiang's expression became more serious. Because this is the Overlord Domain, he said, and here, respect toward hidden experts is not just courtesy, it is survival. Chu Feng turned to him. There is a rule born from blood, Hongqiang answered. The noise of the beach seemed to fade around them as he began telling an old story. During Emperor Qing's era, there was once another Dragonmark Royal Cloak world spiritist. His prestige was enormous. Then, for many years, he vanished. People said he had entered seclusion. Others said he had broken through to a frightening level. Tan Taishui asked, and then he returned? Yes, Hongqiang said. He announced an assembly at the place where he had cultivated in seclusion. Experts from all directions came to pay their respects. The crowd was too large. So many cultivators flew into the sky to watch from above. Chu Feng already understood where this was going. He took offense. Hongqiang nodded. When that world spiritist appeared, he struck down everyone standing in the air, not because they attacked him, not because they insulted him with words, simply because, in his eyes, looking down from the sky meant disrespect. Tan Taishui's voice chilled. For that alone? For that alone, Hongqiang replied. Arrogant? Excessive, of course. But in the Overlord Domain, strength decides whether arrogance becomes madness or law. Chu Feng looked up at the empty sky above the golden beach. Not one cultivator dared to occupy it. That silence above the crowd was more frightening than noise. Hongqiang continued. Since then, when standing in the territory of a hidden expert, people avoid flying unless they wish to challenge that expert's dignity, and the master of this place is the Weaponry Refinement Immortal. No one here wants to test his temper. Chu Feng's eyes narrowed with curiosity. Senior Hongqiang, just how powerful is the Weaponry Refinement Immortal? Hongqiang did not answer immediately. That pause alone made Chu Feng more attentive. I do not know his exact cultivation, Hongqiang said at last. But I am certain of one thing. He is far beyond the Yan clan's ancestor. The difference is not small. Tan Taishui's posture shifted slightly. Even she understood what that meant. Hongqiang looked toward the distant sea. The Immortal Island is separated from this beach by roughly 90,000 miles of water. Yet, if the Weaponry Refinement Immortal wished to kill everyone gathered here, he would not need to leave the island. Chu Feng's expression changed. From 90,000 miles away? He could sit where he is, Hongqiang said, and this beach would become a graveyard. For a moment, neither Chu Feng nor Tantai Shui spoke. They had seen powerful experts before. They had felt the pressure of martial emperor-level beings. But distance like that changed the meaning of power. It meant the enemy did not need to appear. It meant life and death could arrive without warning. Carried by a will too strong to resist, Chu Feng slowly exhaled. So that is the level of a true peak expert. Hongqiang nodded. Do not underestimate martial emperors. The Yan clan's ancestor alone, while fighting, could threaten all life within 1,000 miles. If he truly wanted slaughter, 10,000 miles would not be impossible. Compared to that, the Weaponry Refinement Immortal reaching across 90,000 miles is frightening, but not unbelievable. Tantai Shui accepted this in silence. Chu Feng, however, felt something else rising in his chest. Not fear, longing. The martial emperor realm stood above him like a heavenly mountain. The more he learned about it, the more impatient he became. To others, such strength was terrifying. To Chu Feng, it was a destination. One day, he thought, staring beyond the crowded shore, I will reach that level too. But before that thought could settle, the crowd near the water suddenly erupted. Look! It appeared! It really came. Voices surged like waves. The cultivators packed across the golden beach began rushing toward the shoreline, their restraint nearly breaking beneath excitement. Tantai Shui turned sharply. What happened? Hongqiang's eyes fixed on the sea. Something connected to the assembly, most likely. Chu stepped forward with the crowd, his senses fully alert. The golden beach had already gathered countless experts, hidden motives, and the shadow of an immortal-level craftsman. Now something had emerged from the direction of the water. And whatever it was, it had made even peak experts forget their calm. The Weaponry Bestowment Assembly had not truly begun yet. But the first sign had arrived. The first warning did not come from a sword, a roar, or a beast. It came from the sea itself. Chu Feng stood among the countless cultivators packed along the golden shore, his heaven's eyes quietly piercing through bodies, distance, and confusion. What others saw as a crowded beach, he saw clearly. Far out across the boundless water, a storm was rolling toward the shore. Not an ordinary storm. A black hurricane twisted above the sea like a giant maw, and within it, crimson lightning crawled like angry veins. Every thunderclap sounded less like weather and more like a warning from some ancient formation. Chu Feng's gaze sharpened. That is not natural, Tantai Shui said beside him. Her voice low. Chu Feng did not answer immediately. He watched the storm swallow several cultivators who had tried to rush through. Some turned back in terror. Some were struck down before they could escape. Those with weaker cultivation had no room for pride here. The sea did not care how loudly one boasted on land. Tantai Shui's expression grew cold. A spirit formation made this. Whoever arranged it did not intend to be gentle. Hongqiang narrowed his eyes. Ordinary half-martial emperors would struggle in there. Anyone below that level, crossing alive, would be nearly impossible. Chu Feng looked across the crowded beach, finally understanding why so many cultivators had gathered but refused to advance. So that is why they are waiting, he murmured. They fear the storm. And they were right to fear it. But in the cultivation world, fear and ambition often walk side by side. Just as the crowd hesitated, several powerful figures suddenly stepped forward. Half-martial emperors, one after another, rushed toward the sea. Among them were 3 old experts whose auras had already reached the peak of the half-martial emperor realm. They were not alone. Behind them were younger disciples, clearly not strong enough to brave the storm by themselves. These old monsters had come as shields, guides, and blades. One young disciple swallowed hard. Senior, must we really cross now? The old man in front did not even look back. If you wait until the path is safe, the opportunity will already belong to someone else. With that, they stepped onto the sea, not into the sky, onto the water. That detail mattered. In ordinary places, experts of their level could travel through the air with ease. But here, even they chose to walk the surface of the sea, bracing themselves against waves and formation pressure. The sight stirred the blood of everyone watching. A line of cultivators, small as ants before the black storm, marching toward the immortal island as if challenging heaven itself. Hong Qiang's eyes brightened with rare excitement. "Chu Feng," he said, "we should go." Chu Feng smiled. "I was waiting for you to say that." Tantai Shui gave them both a calm glance. "Then let us not fall behind." The three moved at once, slipping through the crowd with swift movement skills. In only a short time, they reached the edge of the water. But the moment Chu Feng's foot touched the sea, his expression changed. Pressure. An enormous, invisible weight pressed against him from below and all around. It was not attacking his body like a weapon. It was suppressing his movement, his speed, his freedom. On ordinary ground, Chu Feng could cross great distances in the blink of an eye. Even a journey of tens of thousands of miles would not trouble him too much. But this sea was different. Every step demanded strength. Every movement drained energy. The immortal island was 90,000 miles away, and under this suppression, even Chu Feng would need days to reach it if he relied only on himself. And that was assuming the sea had no more surprises waiting. Hong Qiang noticed the change in their pace. "Let me guide you," he said. Chu Feng did not pretend otherwise. "Then we will trouble you, senior." Tantai Shui also nodded. "In this place, saving strength is wisdom." Hong Qiang moved to the front, and the difference was immediate. As a peak half-martial emperor, his foundation was far deeper. Under his lead, the three advanced much faster, cutting across the water until the golden shore faded behind them, and the black storm filled their world. Then the hurricane swallowed them. Thunder exploded around them. Black wind screamed past their bodies, while red lightning flashed like blades in the darkness. The storm pushed, pulled, and tested them from every side. Chu Feng remained steady, but he understood one thing clearly. Without Hong Qiang, this journey would not have been simple. A careless step in such a place could become a disaster. Tantai Shui suddenly turned her head. "Chu Feng," she said through a private voice transmission, "look behind us." Chu Feng glanced back, and there, cutting through the storm with terrifying confidence, came a force that made many other cultivators look insignificant. Their clothing bore a proud symbol: the Nangong Imperial Clan. Nearly 200 of them had entered the sea together, and their presence was not impressive because of numbers alone. It was their strength. Dozens of their younger generation had already reached the half-martial emperor realm. Their elders were even more shocking. Over 100 senior experts moved in formation, and among them were many at the peak of the half-martial emperor level. But the true pressure came from one woman. Her hair carried both black and white, and though her appearance seemed middle-aged, her real age was impossible to judge. Her aura, however, needed no explanation. Martial Emperor. Chu Feng's eyes flashed with interest. "Even a martial emperor came personally," he said softly. "So this is the strength of an imperial clan." Hong Qiang gave a faint snort. "Now you understand why the Overlord Domain is not like other places." Chu Feng did not deny it. In the holy land of martialism, power was not a rumor. It walked openly. It wore clan robes. It crossed storms as if danger itself had to make way. Then Tantai Shui's gaze shifted. "Do not only look at the martial emperor," she said. "Look at the little girl." Chu Feng followed her gaze. Among the Nangong group was a child who appeared no older than 12. Her eyes were bright, her face still soft with youth, and at first glance, she seemed completely out of place among such dangerous experts. But cultivation never lied. Rank 6 martial king. At that age, Chu Feng's heart stirred. He had seen many so-called geniuses. He had defeated many of them. He had watched proud heirs collapse after discovering the difference between talent and true battle strength. But this child was different. At 12 years old, standing at rank 6 martial king, protected personally by a martial emperor, this was no ordinary genius. This was the kind of talent that made clans bet their future, a demon-level genius. The martial emperor woman stayed close to her, not like a casual guardian, but like someone protecting a treasure the entire clan could not afford to lose. The Nangong Imperial Clan advanced quickly, far faster than most powers struggling in the storm. Before long, they drew near Chu Feng, Hong Qiang, and Tantai Shui. Then the little girl noticed him. Her eyes widened, not with fear, but with curiosity, and a hint of mischief. She pointed straight at Chu Feng. "Big brother, big sister," she said to the older youths beside her. "You lied to me." One young man frowned. What are you talking about? The little girl lifted her chin toward Chu Feng. You said only half-martial emperors could pass through this storm. But look at him. That big brother is only a rank 8 martial king, isn't he? The surrounding Nangong juniors immediately turned their eyes toward Chu Feng. For a breath, even the storm seemed to grow quieter. Chu Feng had entered the sea to challenge the trial of the immortal island. But now, under the gaze of an imperial clan, another kind of storm had found him. And sometimes, in the cultivation world, being noticed by the powerful is far more dangerous than being struck by lightning.